So my sister makes art, really cool art, and also really big art. So today we're gonna make her some floating frames for one piece that's about 4 foot by 4 foot. The floating frame effect, we're gonna want probably about a 1/4 inch of gap between the actual frame and the canvas.
And to make this gap, we are going to add on the gap measurement, which is about 1/4 inch, and the width of our boards, which in our case is 3/4 of an inch. Times it by 2 to get 2 inches and add it to our canvas measurement at 48 inches, and it will come out to 50 inches on all 4 cuts.
All right, we have our line on this end of the board. I'm gonna use this little speed square to mark off a 45-degree cut from the top of that board down. And this side we won't need. So I'm gonna mark that with X's, and we're ready to cut. All right, thankfully this painting is pretty square, so we're gonna do the same exact measurement on the sides and for the bottom. So yeah, we just keep cutting. All right, we got all 4 of our boards cut. You wanna make sure that when you're cutting these, you cut the miters the same way. So you want there to be a short end and a long end.
And don't make the same mistake I did here. I bought the $3 corner clamps from Harbor Freight, and they sort of suck. I ended up having to do these one at a time with the more expensive corner clamp instead of getting all 4 done at once, which just added an unnecessary amount of time. And yeah, so pretty much just don't cheap out, get decent clamps, and save yourself the frustration. When I finally added the big red clamp, it pulled everything together a lot better, and I ended up only using that clamp on the other corners, and it worked great. So I would just say, get the big boy clamp, and it gets an A+ from me. Before your glue dries, make sure your corners are square, and then give them the good old brad nail to hold them together while they dry.
This thing's big. Now what we're gonna do is add some boards to the back of it for the canvas to actually sit on to get that floating effect. So for that, I'm gonna use these 1x2 common board strips I've got. So what I'm gonna do is put this in the frame like a T. So it should elevate it inside of the canvas. And since the canvas is 1.5 inches and this is 2.5 inches, that'll bring it to about 0.25 inches, I believe. Recessed inside of the frame, which I think will look good. And I talked to my sister and she said, yeah, that sounds good. So we're gonna get this thing in there. First off, we gotta measure the inside distance and make a cut there. So I'm gonna do that real quick and start making my cuts.
So mechanically, these cuts are just creating a shelf for the canvas to sit on. But emotionally, this is sort of the spooky part. I'm basically building a wooden cage for a very beautiful, very delicate piece of art. And the only thing separating a perfect floating reveal from maybe unfortunately ruining this piece of art, or at least making the frame wonky, is how well I can measure this and make it flush inside of the frame. I haven't built a frame before today, and I told my sister I would purely on blind ambition, and she fully believed I could. So there's a little bit of me that is nervous I might A, not the worst case scenario, fuck up the frame, or B, worst case scenario, fuck up the actual art, and that would suck a lot. This inside board, it doesn't need to be perfectly measured. The only part that needs to be perfect is that it needs to sit completely uniform with the bottom so that the art actually sits uniformly inside of the frame and one side isn't popping out a little bit more than the other. But hey, no pressure. Let's just try not to be the guy who ruined the painting.
All right, so now we gotta get these glued on the sides and then brad nailed into place. All right, we got everything brad nailed and glued. We're gonna let it dry for a little bit, and then we're gonna get to sanding, staining, and mounting this thing. Our frame is done, the glue is dry. Now we're gonna sand it. I'm gonna be hitting it with 80 grit first on my ridiculously oversized pad. I actually got 6 inch instead of 5 inch, so whoops. But yeah, we're gonna get this sanded and then stained and mounted. So I'm excited to see what this looks like on the actual painting. Gonna be pretty cool, I hope. Yeah. We finished sanding this. Next up, we're gonna stain it. Really quickly, I'm gonna vacuum it off and then wipe it down. And then we're gonna be finishing this with Varathane Penetrating Wood Stain in Espresso. So, I'm gonna get this vacuumed down and then we'll get started penetrating it.
And now for the magic trick. This is where we turn the hardware store pine into something a little bit more gallery adjacent. The process is honestly the best part because you can't really mess it up, and you get to start to see what your work looks like when it's going to be done. So you just wipe it on, let it sit for 3 to 4 minutes, and wipe it off. The stain during that 3 to 4 minutes is going to soak into the grain, hide some of the little mess ups, and then it's going to make the piece look a lot more expensive than it has any right to look.
All right, the stain has dried. I've wiped down any excess to make sure it doesn't transfer over to the painting. Our next step is we're gonna set down a little blanket to protect the front of the painting and then nail this to it. These little 1/4-inch spacers are just gonna go around the perimeter, 1 to 2 per side.
And then those fold down so you can flip it over with them still attached to make sure that you maintain an even gap around the perimeter. And hey, Aaron. All right, so now we have to flip this over, which is the spookiest part because even though there's a blanket down, a little bit's still gonna be on the workbench. But yeah, if you flip it, all you gotta do is brad nail the actual frame to the canvas itself and it'll be attached.
Now we just gotta pull out these spacers and hang it up.
And here it is on the wall. I think it came out really good. You know, I sort of surprised myself a little bit. I hadn't built a frame before, but there's 1 or 2 little small things, little places where I think the pine had warped and went a little bit extra long in the gap, which wasn't ideal, but overall I think it just turned out great. I'm really happy with it. And for my first frame, I'm proud. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and like the video, which helps me out in making future ones and other little small projects.
I built this shit! Me!